This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Happy Friday, Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. It's August. That's right, Friday, August 1st, 2025, and I think we might be in the midst of the best stretch of weather so far in 2025. It is sunny, we're in the 70s, and as I look at the forecast, it looks like sunny and 70s tomorrow, and then we've got some low 80s and sunny, and then we've got some more low 80s and sunny. The only thing that's maybe getting in the way of that just a little bit is what you see right here, and that is some of that wildfire smoke from Canada. If you look at the Milwaukee tower cam there, you can see that we're seeing most of the effects right now. At least you notice them on that camera in Milwaukee. Things don't look so bad outside. There are certain places where you can still detect that odor of what's in the air. Otherwise, things are perfect. But if you look at the Sheboygan camera, it doesn't really look all that bad. It could just be the quality of the camera, the angle of the sun, as the way these are facing. But it looks like you can notice it most there in Milwaukee. In any case, it is a beautiful weekend, a light breeze, and the temperatures are fantastic. And obviously, there's a lot going on at the State Fair. That's not all that's happening, though, today. In fact, in terms of hard news, today we've already had a very important day at Milwaukee County Circuit Court, and that was the sentencing of Maxwell Anderson. He is the man who was charged and convicted by a jury in the death and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. I was here in this booth here with the Wisconsin Live Desk for 2 weeks, bringing you updates throughout that trial. It was obviously a long trial, a lot of detail, a lot of drama and emotion, and ultimately he was convicted. Well, finally he learned his fate. We knew that Maxwell Anderson was going to be going to prison with a life sentence. That was mandatory because of the first-degree intentional homicide conviction. The question that was left for the judge is whether or not she would make him eligible for extended supervision. That means, could he be released after, say, 20 years or 30 years? The judge today, after hearing from family members of Sade Robinson and hearing from a family member of Maxwell Anderson as well as Anderson himself, the judge decided not to make him eligible for extended release. That was probably what I think most expected, but nonetheless, she made that official today that he will not be given any opportunity for release unless somehow he is successful on appeal. We did hear from Anderson today, though. He spoke for himself and he said he plans to appeal. He maintains his innocence, says he did not commit this crime. Of course, the jury certainly found otherwise after hearing all of the evidence. And we're going to play for you some of the things that people had to say at sentencing today. A lot of emotion, a lot of tears, at times profanity. We're not going to bring that to you, but we can tell you it was raw. It was very real. And we'll bring some of that. We're also going to be hearing from Fox 6's Bria Jones, who's been covering this case from the beginning, and she was in court today. She also spoke to family members afterwards outside of the sentencing hearing. So Bria will be joining us here on the Wisconsin Live Desk in about another 12 minutes at 12:45. I believe right now, or I don't see it happening yet, but sometime here very soon, there's going to be a press conference held by the Democratic Governors Association. This is happening in Madison, and it's 5 Democratic governors that are going to be speaking out about President Trump's big, beautiful bill and the budget implications of that. Of course, Governor Tony Evers here in Wisconsin, Wisconsin Governor Tim Walz, and 3 other Democratic governors will be a part of that. If we see that happening, we may dip into that for you a little bit as well. Of course, Wisconsin State Fair, this is day 2. Am I right? Is it day 2? Delaney, I'm already losing track of the days. Yeah, okay, it's day 2. Yesterday was only day 1. It feels like it was a long day, but it's only day 1 of the Wisconsin State Fair yesterday. Day 2 is happening today, and we'll tell you a little bit more about some of what's coming up there. In fact, maybe we can tell you a little bit about what to expect if you're going to head down, because it is a beautiful day, and I'm jealous because my wife is there right now. She's got the day off, and she's hanging out with friends. And hey, I'm working because, you know, some of us have to work. But anyway, one thing I can tell you is that if you are heading down, be prepared, $15 to park. Bicycles, though, if you can get your bike there, you can park your bicycle for free. There's, of course, ride shares available and other options as well. If you like going to ball games, you go to American Family Field, you take the restaurant shuttles. Well, they've got similar things to the State Fair as well. So those are some options. I kind of wonder, with all the rain we had a couple of days ago, you know, you see a lot of people do the yard parking. I wonder how that's going to be, if the yards will be a little muddy or if they had enough time to dry up yesterday. Maybe they're better. Maybe I'm just worrying a little bit too much. Hey, it's not my yard, right? That's somebody else's. This is some information about Spin City. So if you want to do some rides, it looks like tickets for the rides are $1 a piece. Now, I think the rides themselves cost anywhere from 3 to 8 tickets, so be prepared for that. If you get a wristband, unlimited rides, of course. I don't know what the cost of the wristbands are, but my last recollection, they were somewhere in the neighborhood of, what, $25, $30? I might be wrong about that. It's been a while since I've been to the State Fair. This is... Well, I see this was Monday. Oh, that's this coming Monday. Is that what that's about, Delaney, the sensory-friendly morning? Okay, so Monday, particularly for those with sensory issues, neurodivergent individuals could really enjoy having some time on Monday morning at State Fair from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. You know, that midway and a lot of the things that go on can really be overstimulating. And for any of us, even without neurodiverse issues, the State Fair can be overstimulated, to say the least. So they are setting aside some time Monday morning to try to minimize some of that and make this a friendly event for people with sensory issues. So you can look forward to that on Monday. Let's see who we have coming up at the main stage tonight. Boys to Men, are you kidding me, with Bobby V? That's tonight, Boys to Men. Boy, it's like we're going back in time. This is back in my days now. Boys to Men will be at the main stage, the Bank 5-9 main stage at Wisconsin State Fair tonight. Tomorrow night, we've got Neo with Bruce Vine on the main stage. And then on Sunday, Queensryche with Great Wyatt and Quiet Riot. Okay, now you're talking my language. That's, hair bands from the 80s. And they're going to be out at the State Fair. I always feel like there's a good night for hair bands at the State Fair, one night or the other. So anyway, all of that is going to be coming up at the Wisconsin State Fair this weekend, so a great time to be out there. What else do we have going on in the news? Today we've got President Trump. His deadline for tariffs is roiling the stock market a little bit. There's a little bit of unease. The Dow Jones is down, I think, around, the last I saw it was around 650 points. Yeah, it is. Because of, there are countries that came to a deal with President Trump. Those countries are breathing a little sigh of relief. But for others, he's imposed tariffs that go up to, I think, 41% in some places. So that's got the stock market a little flustered today, but we can talk more about some of that as things go on here as well. As I said, in just a little bit, we'll be joined by Fox 6's Bria Jones to talk about that sentencing for Maxwell Anderson in the Sade Robinson case. What else am I missing today? You prepared all sorts of stuff, Delaney, and I feel like I'm missing stuff. Anything I'm missing that you know of? Oh, yeah, thank you. That's right, the NASA launch, of course. SpaceX is going to be launching a crew, or did they already do that? Did I miss that? Post-launch news conference will be coming up. So that NASA had to back out, or SpaceX and NASA had to back out of one yesterday because of a thunderstorm cell that developed right before launch. So another chance to do it again today, and I believe that must have already happened by now. I didn't see. You may know as you're watching me at home if that already happened or wherever you are. But in any case, it is another SpaceX launch with NASA astronauts, and I believe there's one astronaut from Japan and maybe one from, I'm not sure if it was a Russian astronaut or someone else, but they're going to the International Space Station. I think they said for like 8 months or something like that, which man, the life it must be to be an astronaut and know you're going to be away from Earth and away from home for 8 months, but what a heck of an experience. But that post-launch conference should be coming up as well. So got all of that and more coming up here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We are glad to have you along. Stick around with us. I will be here until 1:30, and then we will have Sam Kramer, who's going to be here with you, guiding things up until 2:30. And I don't know if it'll be during my time or Sam's time, but we may have Fox 6's Brett Lemoyne at a very special birthday party, a 106th birthday party for an individual there in Waukesha. So we'll have more to say about that a little bit later on. We'll take a break and be back here on the Wisconsin Live Desk right after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Hey, Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson with you here from the Wisconsin Live Desk, 1241 on Friday, August 1st. It looks like the news conference, the post-launch news conference after that SpaceX launch is underway. We're going to have you listen into a little bit of that as I pull this up here. Let's take a listen right now what's going on there.
You know, whether it's in the academic field or other agencies, what they've really brought to the table is a much broader breadth of research and research interest. And so in addition to the commercial aspects of what they've been doing on the business side, they're also really expanding access to other researchers to space. So it's been great overall. Some of that expansion has happened in country. They do a lot of the flying through National Lab, and some of it has happened internationally. But I think it's been really beneficial, and I think it helps lay a solid foundation for understanding what other interest other than NASA we might have in the future for our low Earth orbit commercial destinations.
Thank you. We have another reporter on the phone, Kenneth Chang with New York Times.
Hi, thank you. This is for Ken Bowersock. I was just wondering, could you tell us anything about what Administrator Duffy and Director General Bakanov discussed yesterday? Thank you.
So I don't want to go into a lot of the details of the discussion, but at a high level, let me just say it was really positive. The two of them, I thought, had a great connection, and I think they started the very beginning of what can be a good relationship. And as we work with all of our partners, relationships are key. The way we talk to each other, the ability to call each other on the phone and ask questions or ask for a potential change in the other partner's position is really, really important. And so it was really exciting for me to see the potential for them to work well together. In a few more specifics, they talked a little bit about how it would be good if we could support each other in the future with the capability and standards to be able to rescue each other's crews, to be in a position to do that in the future someday, and related that back to Apollo-Soyuz. And they talked about the things that we might be able to do in the future together if the situation allows us to continue that type of effort.
Thank you. We'll take it back to Irene Klotz right here up front.
Thank you. My question's for Mr. Kawasaki with JAXA. How much did JAXA pay to cost to develop the HTV-X, and are there missions for it beyond the remaining years of the ISS?
Yes, firstly, I do not know, I'm not sure about the amount of money, budget for the HTV-X development, but I did in Japanese yen, maybe 2 billion yen, maybe. Let me check it later, and I'll tell you later. And we are going to provide at least 5 HTV-X for the continuous operation of the ISS until the 2030. And after that, we are going to use that HTV-X to the commercial space station to supply that.
We'll go to Marcia Dunn.
Hi, for Dana. You were talking about the timeline for the last few years of the space station. If you get the deorbit vehicle in 29, how long will crews stay on board? And would you reduce the size from 7 to 6 to 3? I mean, what's the thinking on how you'll handle that in the last months or so?
It's a great question. The goal would be to leave the crew on board as long as we can. One of the big risks we carry on space station is failure of boxes and components, whether inside or external. In order for the USDV to operate properly and the Russian segment, the U.S. segment has to provide power, cooling, so we have these critical infrastructure functions that we have to provide to both sides. And so in order to keep that functional, I've got to keep the systems, the critical systems, healthy. And it requires crew to do that, whether it's going out to do a spacewalk. We have a number of critical systems outside that would require a spacewalk. So the goal is to leave the crew there as long as possible. We've talked a little bit about 3 versus 4. I wouldn't go below.
So this is NASA here talking about some things that are coming up at the International Space Station today. A launch of Crew 11 on a SpaceX craft. It is the 12th mission of that SpaceX craft, including the demo at the very beginning. Those astronauts now, there are a couple of Americans, one from Japan, one from Russia, headed to the International Space Station, and they are going to be in space for the next 6 months or more. Obviously, we'll be talking a little bit more about that as that comes along. We also have Bria Jones, who is standing by. She's going to be outside the Milwaukee County Courthouse in just a moment to talk to us about that really important sentencing today of Maxwell Anderson in the death and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. He was convicted in a 2-week trial earlier this summer. Today, he learned his ultimate fate in court, and we'll talk about that. We'll take a break and do that when we come back here, the Wisconsin Live Desk.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. It's 12:49 on Friday, August 1st. The State Fair is entering day 2 with a beautiful set of sunny skies, other than some of that Canadian wildfire smoke. But in terms of serious news right now, we want to talk about a really important event today at the Milwaukee County Courthouse, and that was the sentencing of Maxwell Anderson, the man convicted by a jury earlier this summer in the death and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. And we have Fox 6's Bria Jones. Let me make sure that I've got things punched up properly before I bring her up. But we've got Fox 6's Bria Jones, who is live out at the Milwaukee County Courthouse. Bria, you've been covering not just this today, but you've been covering this case, obviously, all along for us. We finally got to hear from family members who had to go through this entire grueling process. We also heard from Maxwell Anderson himself and some of his family, and then of course you've heard from people afterwards. Tell us a little bit about what happened today there at the courthouse.
Brian, you could feel the heaviness inside the courtroom. As you mentioned, we both were a part of our trial coverage. So we're just talking just 8 weeks ago, we were out at the Milwaukee County Courthouse when Maxwell Anderson learned his fate, that he was convicted in the death and dismemberment of 19-year-old Shade Robinson. And here we are 8 weeks later, he now being sentenced in court. Judge Laura Crivello sentencing Maxwell Anderson to life in prison without the chance of extended supervision. And that is what Shade Robinson's family, that's what they wanted. You could hear their sigh of relief inside of that courtroom. We also heard from 3 members of her family. We heard from her sister, Adriana Reams. We heard from her mother, Sheena Scarborough. And we also heard from her father, Carlos Robinson. I'll give you a rundown of what they said. Her sister, she's about to be a senior at Golda Meir High School, where I've seen her report card. I can tell you myself, I can vouch for her. She's a straight A student, and she talked about the impact that this case has had on her life, just talking about how her entire world has changed as a 16-year-old, now having to, as she said at some points, pick up her mother off of the ground. She talked about her grandfather, who had recently been diagnosed with cancer, losing his will to live life after the death of 19-year-old Shade Robinson. Then we heard from her mother with some very colorful language there. She was angry. She was upset. You could feel her anger as she addressed Maxwell Anderson, saying that she wants him to go to hell. She says that that's where he belongs. She called him a demon. She made sure that he knew exactly how she felt and the impact that this is taking on her family. And we also heard from her father. I could see the stress ball that he had in his hand when he walked up to enter, to be able to give his victim impact statement. And interesting enough, during the trial, I believe it was maybe day or two, he actually broke his stress ball with some of that graphic evidence that we saw during witness testimony. So we heard from her mother, her father, and her sister. Then on the Maxwell Anderson side, on the defense's side, for the first time, we heard from Stephen Anderson. That is Maxwell Anderson's father. He addressing Shade Robinson's family for the first time publicly. We did receive a statement back when this all happened of April of 2024, but this is the first time we have heard the words come out of Maxwell Anderson's family's mouths. They said they are praying for Shade Robinson's family. His father said, "Hey, I can't ask you to forgive. That's up to you and your God." But he did say that he's been thinking of them. They're in his thoughts and prayers. He was very emotional when he said that. And he also mentioned that he lost someone who was like a son to him. So he said, in a sense, obviously, in totality, he could never understand their full pain. But he said that he has some sorts of understanding of what they're going through, having lost someone who he considered to be a son. And then he had a long emotional pause because he addressed his son, 34-year-old Maxwell Anderson. And that, to me, that was very heavy, because you could feel his hesitation I'm not a parent, but you could feel his pain as a parent looking at his son. And from what we saw inside of the courtroom, you could also see Maxwell Anderson, for the first time, from what I've seen, becoming very emotional throughout this entire ordeal, hearing from his father, addressing him, saying that he hopes that he has a chance to improve, to become a better person, if there is a chance for him to ever get out of prison and return to life, which we know will not be the case. And then Maxwell Anderson, he did not testify. He did not take the stand during the trial, but for the very first time, we heard him give a statement. He apologized to the family of Shade Robinson, but he also maintained his innocence. And it was something that Judge Laura Crivello said that kind of resonated with me as well, and so many others. She said, looking into his face, she says that she could see no signs of remorse, which ultimately led to that sentencing, because we know his attorney, Anthony Cotton, he wanted his client to be eligible for extended supervision after at least serving 25 years in prison, which will not be the case here, Brian. So just a lot unfolding inside of that courtroom. And then after we had a chance to speak with the family again, they addressed members of the media. I had a chance to ask Shade Robinson's father, Carlos, because I saw Carlos and Maxwell Anderson lock eyes. He said that was the very first time that he had a chance to lock eyes with Maxwell Anderson. And unlike Judge Crivello, he told me that he could see signs of remorse. I said, if the judge can see it, what exactly did you see? And he said he can read people and he could feel his energy, and he could tell that Maxwell Anderson was remorseful despite him not ever saying so.
A lot there that happened today because of these different people who spoke. But what stood out to me was the very first speaker, her sister, Adriana, who is just 16 years old. and she spoke with such eloquence. Almost seemed like she is the one who has been the one grounding this family that is in so much turmoil.
Yes.
Obviously, you could see her mother is still torn apart. She used language that, frankly, we're going to have to apologize to the FCC for. The father had a tough time even getting his words out, but she spoke at length, and the judge even commended her for the way she spoke. But I just think at 16, she clearly looked up to her sister. She looked up to her older sister as someone who was kind of showing her the way after what she called maybe a difficult upbringing. What did you take away from that?
You know, Brian, exactly that. She looked up to her sister, and she even said that one of Sade's teachers gave her a letter that she wrote a long time ago, saying that she wanted to be a role model for her younger sister. Adriana, I see her around town sometimes riding her bike, so it did resonate to me when she said that there are strangers who don't know me coming up to me saying that they're praying for me, because I personally have been one of those strangers that have seen her out riding on her bike saying, hey, I'm thinking of you, I'm praying for you. And just the weight of that as a teenager, as a 16-year-old discovering yourself, it's just something that I cannot even wrap my mind around. And listening to her statement, she herself is struggling with this, as you can see. I know Gina told me that they both are going through therapy. Her father, he's also going through therapy, but it's just not enough for them at this point in time. Adriana, she talked about basically lifting this family up. Again, her grandfather diagnosed with cancer, him losing his will to live, her grandmother, her uncle, she's supporting her family. She talked about literally picking her mother up off the ground. As we saw today, as Sheena walked up to give her statement, a victim advocate had to assist her walking up. Sheena is half the size of what she was when Sade was killed back in April of 2024. So this is taking a mental, emotional, and a physical toll on this family.
I know that Judge Crivello made the comment that, you know, trials can re-victimize victims and their families.
Yes.
And obviously Maxwell Anderson had the legal right to go through a jury trial, to exercise his right, but it does weigh on a judge when they say, you showed no remorse, you put the family through this. And I take that into consideration. What I think we saw and heard from the family was how grueling this process has been. Not just, I mean, any murder trial would be that way. This was especially difficult because of the extended, prolonged search for body parts, and in particular the fact that all of the remains, even as we talk here right now, have not been found. Her head has not been found. They don't have Sade Robinson's entire remains. They can't put her completely to rest. That seemed to weigh on the judge's decision. Yeah?
Yes. That definitely weighed on her decision from what she said inside of the courtroom. And I would say all three of the victim impact statements, from what I recall, everyone talked about the torture of not knowing where the rest of her remains are. Her family, they refer to her head as her crown. Her cousin Kiki, who I spoke with yesterday to preview the sentencing, she's still searching. So it's a situation where these people, they are not giving up hope. They want to find all of Sade. Her father, during his statement, as you said, Brian, he could barely get out all of his statement, but a portion of that, he did take the time to say he may never be at peace because he does not have all of his child. So again, this is what this family is living with. And when you mentioned Judge Crivello saying that Maxwell Anderson showed no remorse, she also brought up a lot of what he said during his pre-sentencing conversation. This was a recorded conversation, from my understanding, from what she said in the courtroom, because she read it back verbatim. She discussed basically her notes of what she heard, but she talked about Maxwell Anderson saying that he felt that the age difference between him and Sade was a big part of the trial. I believe her wording exactly was she didn't even make much note of it. So to her, and her,
I don't remember anybody even talking about that. I don't remember that coming up at the time.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, we know, she was 19. I believe he was 33 at the time, but that never really, from my understanding, no one ever really touched on race or an age difference when it came to this case. It was just about the gruel manner in which way she was killed, which we still, honestly, we don't know exactly how she died because there was no true crime scene. She talked about some of the evidence that I guess he wanted to dispute, the very graphic images that we saw of her kind of position face down on the sofa. I believe it was a red sofa, and him touching one of her breasts that was cut off. He told the in the pre-sentencing, he said that there was a video, which she asked the prosecution, and they said no. The evidence that they submitted was what it was. It were pictures. He said that that was a still of a video. So again, the Judge Crivello, is saying that Maxwell Anderson's reality, he sees things differently from the way that they may have actually been. She also mentioned another big thing for him when she talked about when they asked him, how do you explain being at the scene of that car fire where we see bus video showing Maxwell Anderson and surveillance video showing him walking away from that car fire near 30th and Lisbon. She says that he was asked how could he explain that. He told people that he was in the area buying marijuana at the time. When they asked him to go further into detail, he pled the fifth. And then another instance when they said, how do you explain what happened after you two got to your apartment and she left? He told the reporter that he regretted not walking Shawty Robinson to her car because, in his words, he said he believes some sort of assailant came and abducted her, which goes against everything that we saw during that 2-week trial.
Well, and I think really today, the one thing we heard for the first time, the one really new thing was hearing from Maxwell Anderson himself. And we heard Sade's mother make one last appeal. Please,
Yes.
if you have any good left in, she called him a demon. She said he should go to hell. She called him the devil. But she said, if you have any good left in you, let us know where her crown is. And I think a lot of us wondered, okay, now that he's been convicted, is he finally going to fess up and lead police to her head? Instead, he sat there today and he said, I haven't gone for a plea deal in this from the beginning because I'm innocent. I didn't do it. He maintains that he didn't. He, in fact, said, I'm going to appeal, and I hope they'll find out who really did it or find real justice. So he's sticking to the story. Whether the evidence points that way or not, he's saying I'm still innocent.
Exactly that, Brian. He, again, maintaining his innocence inside of the courtroom when there were about 50 people there in support of Shawty Robinson, who I could feel just from us being in that room, they were kind of upset and bothered by that comment. They were also bothered by some of the comments from his defense attorney, Anthony Cotton, and even going back to his statements when her sister, as well as Sheena Scarborough, they both mentioned during the trial when they mentioned some drugs that were found inside of Shawty Robinson's apartment. And again, Judge Laura Crivello ending this by talking about, there's no violence associated with Shawty Robinson because the prosecution, they did go through some violent incidents that Maxwell Anderson has been a part of when it comes to not only his family, but other members of the public. So this is someone who Judge Laura Crivello says had a very dark past, and she was trying to figure out in her mind before the sentencing, how do you bring this person with such a dark past back into society? And ultimately she decided that that should not be his fate.
I thought it was really interesting you talk about the attorney Tony Cotton, who's a very well-known criminal defense attorney, but he made the one statement about Maxwell Anderson being in solitary confinement all this time. And he said I think he used the phrase, that's a torturous experience or something to that effect, a torturous way of living.
I remember hearing that word.
I wondered how the family reacted to that, thinking of when you think of the torture she was put through by Maxwell Anderson, dismembering her body, scattering her body parts, in whatever way she was ultimately murdered, which we still don't know. For him to use that word, it stood out to me. I wondered, did you hear or see any reaction from the family on that?
I think it was similar to when Maxwell Anderson said, he hopes that investigators continue to investigate because he wants justice to be served for him and he wants them to find out who really did this. And you could kind of feel that, what are you saying? You could just kind of, it was a sigh of relief when Judge Crivello said the sentencing, but in certain moments you could feel that tightness of the family when they were bothered by some of the language, because for them, this is them having to relive the situation over and over again. So this is an already painful situation, and some of that language just only added insult to injury.
Well, Bria Jones, we've had you for enough time. Thank you so much for all of the debrief on what happened. Thank you for your coverage throughout the Shawty Robinson trial. We'll let you go. Thanks again, Bria.
Thank you, Brian.
So just to recap again, Maxwell Anderson Took my microphone down, not Bria's. Maxwell Anderson found, rather sentenced to not only life in prison, but without extended supervision. So he will not be released so long as he lives according to that sentence, unless he does have a successful appeal. Now, we talked about some of the people who spoke at sentencing. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to play you some of those comments from Sade Robinson's family, from Maxwell Anderson's father, and from the defendant, Max Anderson himself. We'll do that when we come back here on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. It's 1:08 p.m. Friday, August 1st. It's day 2 of the Wisconsin State Fair, and just be aware that if you are going to head down that way right now, look at I-41, 45. There's some real backups, and that's been kind of with the construction and things going on there lately, that's been pretty typical, I think, most days. But just be aware if you're going to head down toward the fairgrounds, plan some extra time to get through that zone. It looks like on I-94 westbound there's a backup, and I think that might not be the exact area, but I believe in the neighborhood of Highway 16 right off of 94 is where there was a pretty bad accident that I know our Brett Lemoyne and Eddie Poser were responding to see if they could get some video. That may have temporarily shut down Highway 16 in that area. I'm not sure if it's operating, but just be aware you got some of that stuff that's coming up on the roads as you head down. Also, one more thing to be aware of, air quality. While it's a beautiful sunny day, we do have some of this moderate to unhealthy air in the area. Right now in Milwaukee County, you can see it's part of the unhealthy, sensitive area. This is from that wildfire smoke coming down from Canada. If only they could get a hold of their own smoke and get that under control. It seems to be affecting our summers. Once again this year it's doing it. But other than some of that air quality that could be a little bit of a concern, everything else looks pretty good. It seems like the weather is fantastic. 70s, sunny, light breeze, a heck of a lot better than the really steamy stuff we've been dealing with for the last week or more. But we just got done talking to Fox 6's Bria Jones. She was down at the Milwaukee County Courthouse for the sentencing of Maxwell Anderson. I want to play for you some of the things that we heard today from family members who got their first chance to speak directly to the court and directly to the defendant, Maxwell Anderson himself, the man convicted of killing 19-year-old Sade Robinson, dismembering her and scattering her body parts all throughout the Milwaukee area. We're going to start with Sade Robinson's younger sister, 16-year-old Adriana Reams. She spoke at length and eloquently. Let's take a listen to one of the things she had to say. But first, let me make sure I've got the sound up and ready to go. Let's take a listen to this.
cannot meet any person without the fear that they're going to harm or kill me. Because all my sister did was meet someone, and as a result, he ended her life.
So that is Adriana Reams. She also
I cannot meet any person without the fear that they're going to harm or kill me.
That was Adriana speaking. She also spoke, let's see if I can find, yeah. She talked a little bit about really what she was there for as a message to the judge, is to ask Judge Crivello not to allow Maxwell Anderson ever to be let out of prison. By virtue of the first-degree intentional homicide conviction and the jury verdict, he was certain to have a prison sentence of life in prison. However, under Wisconsin law, that still gives the sentencing judge the option to offer extended supervision after, say, 25 years in prison. Judge Crivello had that option today after listening to all of the statements and reviewing the pre-sentence investigation, but this was part of Adriana's plea to the judge in that regard.
I beg you to not let this man have any type of parole. You heard his ex-girlfriend describe the psychological abuse and self-harm he tried to impose on her. His behavior is clearly a pattern, and there is no way that after he has demonstrated the extent of what he is willing to do to a person so casually, he should ever walk these streets again.
Again, that is Sade Robinson's sister, Adriana Reams, who spoke at length today. The judge actually commended her for her eloquence speaking on her sister's behalf. We also heard from Sheena Scarborough, Sade Robinson's mother, and she was at times, let's just say, unfiltered. She used language that doesn't usually air on television, and of course it was live on FOX6 News, something that our news director will have to reach out to the FCC and apologize for. It's, live television, things happen. But Sheena was speaking from the heart, clearly. It was raw. She called Maxwell Anderson multiple times. She called him the devil and said he belonged in hell. But she wasn't just critical of Anderson, she was critical of his family for, the defense they put up for, as she put it, attempting to sell the house. She felt they were trying to sort of cover things up. These were things she said. But she did have a message directly for Maxwell Anderson, and let's listen to what she had to say there. Let me make sure I've got the sound up again. Here we go.
My daughter had to cross your demonic path. You plotted and planned to kill, dismember, then you disrespectfully spread my daughter across the Milwaukee like a piece of trash. How dare you?
Now, she also spoke, as I mentioned when we were talking to Berea, Sheena Scarborough said, this is your chance. She spoke directly to Anderson again and said, this is your chance to finally do something to help. And that was with regard to the location of the one piece of Sade Robinson that still hasn't been determined, and that is the location of her head. Let's listen to what she had to say about that.
But I'm going to respectfully request that you confess where the rest of my daughter's crown is, if you have any respect left for me and her father and her sister and the rest of my family in this community. You've already done the worst. You can at least give us that much.
Again, Sheena Scarborough, the mother of Sade Robinson, speaking there to the defendant, Maxwell Anderson. Carlos Robinson, Sade's father, was also in court. He seemed to struggle more to find his words. He spoke in a measured tone, but he also had a message. This one was for the judge, and it was whether or not Maxwell Anderson should have any eligibility to be released from prison at any point. Here's what he had to say about that.
You deserve what you get. He deserves the punishment that he gave to my daughter. Everything that he did should be done to him. That's how I feel. To me, that's justice.
And that is Carlos Robinson, Sade Robinson's father. We did hear from a family member of the defendant for the first time, Maxwell Anderson's father, Stephen Anderson, spoke. At first, he did address the Robinson family, and he told them, and I don't know if we probably have this one, so maybe I don't know if I gave this one to you or not, did I, or if I tweeted this one out, and we'll have this available to use. But he had spoken to the Robinson family and said, very emotionally, that he feels for them, that his heart goes out to them, that he can't know the kind of pain they're going through. He mentioned that he had had a loss of his own, someone he felt was like a son who had died about 10 years ago, and that he still had trouble forgiving the person he felt was responsible for that, but he did indicate that he knows it couldn't be the same thing. But then he turned his attention to his own son and addressed Max Anderson in court.
To Max, we want you to know that we love you.
Okay.
And support your plan for self-improvement. In this, we hope for a path for you to become a positive influence for society, both while you are incarcerated and hopefully after.
So there it is, the father making his appeal, asking for, or hoping that there would be some chance his son could eventually be released. Of course, that is ultimately not what the judge decided. I mentioned that he had a message for the Robinson family just prior to that. This is what he had to say to the Robinson family.
Today's family, there are no words that I can share that will reduce your pain. You are all in my thoughts every single day. Although it is not the same, having lost a boy that was like a son to me 10 years ago, I have some sense of what you are feeling.
Again, that is Maxwell Anderson's father, Stephen Anderson. After he spoke, we heard from the defense attorney, Tony Cotton, and then shortly after that, Maxwell Anderson himself, the first time we have heard him speak other than his plea in court. He spoke to Judge Crivello, and we wondered all along, once the jury verdict came in, it's one of the number one questions you often have in a homicide trial is, will the defendant ultimately acknowledge their guilt? Will they apologize? Will they maintain their innocence? Well, we heard from Maxwell Anderson today on that one.
I took this to trial without ever once trying to make a plea deal of any kind because I did not commit these crimes. And so I plan to appeal my convictions while I hope and pray that further investigations not only prove my innocence, but find and deliver true justice.
So there it is. I did not commit these crimes. Maxwell Anderson maintains his innocence even through sentencing. Judge Laura Crivello spoke at length after that. We heard Bria mention she referred to his pre-sentence investigation, during which there were some questions about whether the things he said matched with some of the actual things that were presented at trial. She indicated that she felt he had taken a light from the community, and she sentenced him to the maximum, which was life in prison without extended supervision. So Maxwell Anderson, unless his appeal is ultimately successful, and there is in fact someone else found accountable for the crime, he will serve the rest of his life in prison. It is 1:19 here at the Wisconsin Live Desk, and coming up in about 10 minutes, Sam Kramer is going to be taking over. He'll take you through the rest of the afternoon up to 2:30, and I think one of the things he's going to have, I'm almost jealous now because I'm excited to see this one. Brett Lemoyne is in Waukesha, where he is going to be attending the celebration of a 106th birthday party at a local retirement or assisted living center. I was just thinking about that as I was kind of looking things up. Today is, August 1st of 2025. So that means she was born August 1st. I think maybe it might be August 2nd is the actual birthday. But of 1919, Woodrow Wilson was president when this person was born, and FDR and those 4 terms in office hadn't even come into reality yet. So it was looking at other things like, television and radio hadn't been invented. Email certainly wasn't. So live streaming surely wasn't a part of anything. I can only imagine what it must be like to live your whole life where you were writing letters to communicate at best, and now you're in a world where your birthday is going to be live streamed on the FOX6 News Milwaukee live stream. Anyway, that should be coming up in the second hour of the Wisconsin Live Desk today. I'm going to take a break, and we'll have more here at the Wisconsin Live Desk after this. It's Friday, October 1st, State Fair Day 2. We'll talk about that coming back when we come right back. And Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. It is 1:23. As I mentioned, it is State Fair Day 2. Gorgeous day, other than the wildfire smoke. If we take a look at the map here, you can see that there are some, there's some particles in the air from that Canadian wildfire smoke that has come down to Wisconsin again, floating around. Parts of the area are just in the moderate category, and then some, Milwaukee County in particular there, and areas south and west are in the unhealthy category for sensitive individuals. Not quite in the unhealthy for everyone or the very unhealthy, so it's not the worst it could be. It's been worse before, but still keep that in mind. Otherwise, absolutely gorgeous day to be at the State Fair. It is going to be in the 70s, sunny, light breeze. Man, what a day. I'm jealous. My wife is there. Denise, you're probably not watching the live stream. If you are, get off of that and have something on a stick that's delicious, like, I don't know, corn or something. Have cheese curds. I don't know. I'd have cheese curds if I was there right now. But all that's going on. What else do we have going on at State Fair? We could tell you who's going to be there tonight. And that is, let me drag this over here. And we've got Boys to Men is going to be at the main stage, the Bank 5-9 main stage at State Fair with Bobby V. That's tonight. Tomorrow, you've got Neo on the main stage with Bryce Vine. And then on Sunday, Hairband Sunday, it's Queensryche with Great White and Quiet Riot. That is going to be on Sunday. If you're looking to head down, be aware parking is $15, but if you can ride your bicycle there, parking is free, or, find somebody around there with a lawn who will let you park for cheap. That's always a great tradition around the state fairgrounds. There's ride shares available. Dousman Transportation's got shuttles, and then if you want to head out to your favorite bar and restaurant, maybe have a sandwich or a cocktail and head over on a shuttle, that's another way to go. And also, remember, if you want to ride rides, the tickets are $1 a piece, but the rides themselves take 3 to 8 tickets depending on what you plan to ride. Or you can get unlimited rides with wristbands And if you plan to ride a lot of stuff, it ends up being worth it after just a few rides. So that's an option as well. And I really think this is cool. If you've got someone in your family, someone you know who has sensory concerns, stimulation overload with some of the stuff that you'd see at a state fair, particularly the Midway area, they're going to be doing a sensory-friendly morning on Monday between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. It doesn't say what that means here. I suspect that means less of the lights and things going along with those rides, something for the neurodiverse population who may not be able to manage some of that overstimulation, but may still want to enjoy the rides at the state fair. They're going to have sensory-friendly Monday morning, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. at the state fair. So pretty cool thing that's going on there. As I mentioned, it is coming up on 1:30. We're going to have Sam Kramer in here in just a few minutes. But one of the things we're going to take you to in a little bit is the National Transportation Safety Board. They're meeting right now as they're talking about that crash between the Army helicopter and the airliner that killed 67 people in Washington, D.C. It turns out it has been determined by NTSB that that Army helicopter was flying above its altitude limit. There was an issue with the altitude, but there had already been warnings given by some of the FAA workers there about near misses and about helicopters that were flying too close to aircraft. And so there's been some pretty powerful testimony so far in terms of the outcome there and whether or not the FAA bears some responsibility for not having done more to protect the lives of those that were ultimately lost. We're going to take you to listen into some of that here in just a little bit, and then after a while, Sam Kramer will join us, and he'll be taking you through the next hour of the Wisconsin Live Desk. And as I mentioned, that should include Brett Lemoyne out in Waukesha at a 106th birthday party, which I'm going to be watching the live stream because I got to check that one out. That one sounds pretty cool. If you are heading out to the Wisconsin State Fair, just be aware there is a little bit of traffic as you are heading southbound on I-41 if you're trying to get down to, or if you're leaving State Fair or heading up north. 41's just kind of a mess these days, construction and whatnot, so keep an eye on that. There's a little bit of traffic also heading 43 northbound into downtown. You can see that there, and then there's a little bit, some slowdowns and other things briefly. Southbound 43 coming down from Ozaukee County, and then a little bit down there coming in from Oak Creek up into the Milwaukee or downtown Milwaukee area. There is a little bit of a slowdown out there going westbound on 94 that looks like it's kind of near the Lake Country area. We heard of a crash that was on Highway 16. Haven't gotten the details on that, but obviously you can check out FOX6 News for all of those details. For now, I'm going to take you over to we're going to take you actually to this. That is the NTSB hearings in Washington with the Federal Aviation Administration. We'll let you listen to that, and Sam Kramer will take over here on the live desk in just a little bit. With that, I'm Brian Polson, and we will see you next time on the live desk.
Than the government is, and sometimes that's good. I realize you need harmonization, but what are your barriers in being able to get this technology into commercial aircraft or anyone operating in the NAS?
From the air traffic perspective, I would look towards our AVS partners to see if there's any issues with the rulemaking or anything along that line. There's got to be a safety case, I'm sure, but I believe everyone's on the same page that we want advancement in technologies to make a safer NAS.
So I'll go down through the other FAA. What barriers? Everybody's got to have a gripe. Now's your chance.
Well, one of the barriers was discussed earlier where this is international. So Europe had a rule which exclusively called out TCAS version 7.1. So that was the only TCAS system allowed in their airspace. So it takes international coordination to change the rule, and some of that is what has held up XA getting into being introduced in the airspace. So it's elements like that. It's international standardization.
And as we go to that, I'm going to bring up a different aspect. It was mentioned earlier, especially by the Army, spoofing and jamming on certain signals is a real threat, and it's still a real threat currently, not only in other places of the world, but I think in the U.S. Is that an accurate description? Sorry.
Spoofing is something we're worried about, but I would say even more important or more worrisome is the fact that everything is open source and beyond the FAA's ground station, TSB or otherwise. There's thousands of commercially available. Anybody in their backyard can have a receiver to get that information and do whatever they want with that information.
I only bring it up that it appears CISA, which is the Security and Infrastructure Security Agency for the U.S. government. It was about, I believe, 7 days before this crash, it actually disclosed a flaw in collision avoidance systems, specifically TCAS version 7.1 and before. Has that been completely addressed from the FAA technical review?
So I can address that a little bit. So CISA identified basically two flaws. One of which is the capability for someone on the ground to control the TCAS unit, change the settings, put it into standby even. That's something we've known about for a long time, and we've addressed that in ACAS XA. We no longer allow the ground to make changes to equipment in the aircraft. So ACAS XA solves that problem. The other problem they pointed out was basically the fact that it's reliant on unencrypted open source signals. That's how it works, and that is much more difficult, possibly to the point of impossible to solve, certainly without a brand new system.
Okay. I want to go back to Mr. Van Vechten, just for a quick question. There was an exchange at the beginning of the technical panel between Dr. Bramble and Dr. Kasner with respect to the see and avoid concept. And there was, I believe Dr. Kasner said something along the lines of aircraft may appear relatively stationary in a pilot's field of view. And because our docket is so voluminous and there are many people watching, especially families who are trying to find things, I do like to point out some of the witness interviews and statements, and there were two that stood out to me, which, and the quotes were, in fact, it was, and for all I know, it was you. I never write down who said what. I write it down by position. One of the standardization pilots in an interview on the question of what could be seen and whether they may not see aircraft in the area of the city lighting coming in on helicopter route 4. I've lost it on the city lights, speaking of an aircraft, maybe 25% of the time, just to end up staring at it, fixating on that spot to wait for something to move and then regaining it again. Oh, this was Captain Gallen. Depending on their level, it's possible for them to be drowned out because we can't tell if they're a tower or if there's relative motion. That aircraft may look like it's actually in a fixed position. And then someone else said, I frequently lose sight of aircraft and city lights, usually for half a second because I'm looking to where I'm expecting them to be. Maybe they've turned, or, I'm seeing the red light instead of the green light, and the red light matches every other antenna light that's out there. The radio antennas are all red, so I lose aircraft a lot. We are doing a visibility study, and we'll see what that brings. I'm curious about, you have night vision goggles on. We've talked about losing sight with city lights. And what about the structure of the helicopter itself?
Yes,
Does that impact what can be seen?
Yes, so we have several illusions that can happen while we're flying. One of them is structural illusion, and that's just from parts of the aircraft that could obstruct view or possibly cause a false view because of just the way the angle of the aircraft is.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm asking is we saw that in our Ketchikan investigation where there was a midair collision between two aircraft, a Beaver and an Otter. Okay, with that, Member Inman.
I've just got one, I guess, follow-up, and this is for PSA. On your FOQA data where you identified 97% of your RAs were complied with, can you provide an anonymized data set for our investigators to review that from? I think it's a very stunning stat. I think because PSA asked it of you, you already knew what the answer was. I think it would be helpful for us to see that data.
Member Inman, if I could ask you to make that request of our participant this afternoon who's actually in charge of that data.
Well, he's a witness, isn't he?
Yes.
He's in the room, I suspect?
No, not yet.
Could you? Okay, I'll make it again. Thank you.
Let me see. Could I give a little bit additional information on my last statement?
Yes, sir.
So with the structural illusion, it is not uncommon if I'm flying multi-ship, so I have another aircraft right in front of me, maybe 2 to 3 discs, so 50 to 70 feet away. I look down for a second, maybe write down a fuel calculation or change a radio. I look back up and that aircraft's gone. And that's because the structure of the helicopter blocks it from my view. So you move your head and then you can, it's right there. So at night in this particular situation, I could see where it would be very easy for the structure of the aircraft to block lights in the distance, especially because they'd be much smaller than an aircraft 80 feet away from me.
Thank you for adding that, because that's exactly, for many reasons, but that is why we do these feasibility studies. So with that, I will just, we're done. So I would just ask the technical panel, are you done?
Correct. The technical panel has no more questions.
Okay, so we're going to break for a late lunch. How long you want? I don't want to shortchange panel 5.
45 minutes is a reasonable.
3:15?
That'll work.
And we'll go as long as we need to. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Sam Kramer with you. It is Friday, August 1st. Thanks so much for joining us on the Wisconsin Live Desk. It's been an action-packed Wisconsin Live Desk here on this Friday. Brian Polson, the Fox 6 investigator, was here with you in hour one, really diving into the news of the day, especially here in Milwaukee. That is the sentencing of Maxwell Anderson, the man that was convicted in the homicide of Sade Robinson, a trial that really gripped our community as well as really kind of the state as a whole, and those that are gripped by true crime across the nation. Judge sentencing him today to life in prison without extended supervision, that is, without parole, just extended supervision being the language here in the state of Wisconsin. The other big story, at least locally, has been this air quality. As I'm taking a look over here, let's see. Take an engine 43. Take a look outside here. These are traffic cams, and so far the roads have been good, but as you look at the top of the screen, you can still kind of see a little bit of that haze. And we covered this story last night for you on all of our shows on Fox 6 News at 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10, specifically at 9 and 10, looking at just the number of fires that are burning, more than 600 of them actively burning in Canada, that's causing this smoke to come out and actually just cross the border, drift out of the northeast down south to our area. And I'm going to take now the air quality alert graphic that our weather team has put together. So this was extended. Air quality alert had been yesterday through noon. Today was extended because the winds just really haven't changed. So this is now extended through noon tomorrow, Saturday, August 2nd. Again, this is from the surface smoke from those wildfires, hundreds of them burning north of us in Canada. And it's unhealthy for people that are living in sensitive groups. It is sometimes unhealthy for everyone. That's how bad it was yesterday. Today it isn't as bad, but nevertheless, it is something that we need to keep an eye on. And for more on that, let's check in with our weather expert. Lisa Michaels is hanging out for us. Lisa, hello. What are you tracking? What are you seeing as far as the air quality and such today?
All right, can you hear me? Got me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, just like what you mentioned, the air quality today is not as bad as yesterday. However, we have some updates because, as you mentioned, the air quality alert was supposed to actually end Thursday at noon. Then it got extended to Friday at noon. And then today, now it's been extended to Saturday at noon. Now, looking ahead, I do very well think they're going to even extend this into Sunday. And that's just because right now we are having a lower dense area of surface smoke moving in. However, there is another thicker plume to our north that is likely going to start to come around this high pressure that will move back in tomorrow into Sunday. If that's the case, like our models are projecting, then we will likely be having air quality worsening again. And you mentioned sensitive groups. Those are people who have any kind of asthma, any kind of breathing-related issues, heart-related conditions. That also includes young children and babies and elderly adults. But with our air quality looking to potentially get even worse, where it would be just as bad as yesterday for everyone, that includes every single person, whether you have any kind of underlying health condition or not. I've had a lot of people tell me, well, it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal. These are carcinogens in the atmosphere that when you breathe them in, you cannot see them. It damages your lungs and can eventually down the line lead to cancer. So it is very important to make sure if you have to go outside, wearing an N95 mask is not going to completely get rid of it, but it will filter out about 95% of that particulate matter. Keep your windows, your doors closed. Have the recirculation button on for your car if you're driving. And another thing to note, just again, limiting your time outside. This is something that once you breathe it in, you can't get that back out of your body. So you're causing damage every time you are breathing this into your lungs. Another thing we're also going to continue to track with this is, of course, the weather this weekend. It's going to be gorgeous, but the smoke is still going to impact the amount of time you can get outside. Your pets, when you walk them outside, they're also going to be impacted by the smoke. So we are starting to see right now the air quality actually worsen from the Illinois-Wisconsin border, and that air is moving north. So I still anticipate to see some of the hazy skies continuing through the upcoming days, not looking to clear out anytime soon. Of course, there's a difference though. The reason why this is issued, it's the thicker smoke near the surface. If that thicker smoke was aloft, it wouldn't be as big of an issue because it has to be near the surface in order for it to cause harm to our bodies. So Sam, you've mentioned it. You've been tracking some of those fires. I know you also sent out a great email yesterday, which you had a very reliable website.
Yeah.
And we had, you said we were in the top 10 worst air qualities in the world.
Top 10 at 3:30 yesterday. Beloit had it worst.
Yes.
Milwaukee wasn't all that far off in third place, if you will, and Green Bay, I believe, was 7th. I have the numbers up in front of me right now. Worst in the U.S. is Manhattan, Kansas. Not what you would have expected, but number 2 is Superior, Wisconsin, and IQ Air. It's a Swiss company that studies air quality all around the world with monitors everywhere. That's the only Wisconsin city. Marquette, Michigan is up there as well, which probably isn't surprising. But you mentioned it was unhealthy for everyone yesterday. We went down to the lakefront. We saw people riding their bikes, and older gentlemen told us, yeah, you can kind of feel it. It doesn't hit you right away like a hammer, in his words, but it's gradual. There were people playing tennis, no problem. But the photojournalist I was working with, Colin Schemenauer, and myself both realized, like on the way back, after spending probably an hour and a half outside, had a little bit of a headache.
Yeah.
The throat was a little scratchy, and this is what can happen. And so if you're in good health, you can probably ride it out. But nevertheless, these are carcinogens. These are harmful particles that are in the air. But certainly if you have heart disease, if you have asthma, or any sort of breathing difficulties, this is not good news in any stretch of the imagination.
Correct. And Sam, you bring up literally the golden point that I want to make. This is going to impact people at different times. So those with the underlying health conditions, it may impact you within a short notice. Could be maybe a couple minutes, versus people who may not have those underlying health issues. You might not get the impacts right away. You might have to wait 20 minutes, 30 minutes, several hours before those impacts kick in. And sometimes, and we've even had some people we've talked to this morning that were outside yesterday, this morning they've woken up with the scratchy throat, with the coughing, with the chest pain. These are all symptoms that do not necessarily show up on the onset of going outside. So even though you may be out there thinking, oh, I can smell it, it's not too bad. I can still be active. I can still breathe. You are causing that damage, and the impacts can come within the upcoming hours to days. So that is why we are definitely telling people to take this seriously. While the air quality is more for sensitive groups today, I would expect, based on what we're looking at right now, that it'll probably go back to unhealthy levels for everyone by the weekend.
Yeah, I was tracking it this morning and deciding when I should walk my dogs, and I figured I'd better do it earlier before it gets a little worse. Fortunately, I did. But the fact that this is extending Saturday, you expect it could be extended into Sunday, to me, reading between the lines, is that we don't have the wind pushing this out of the way. Like the jet stream just kind of is what it is coming down from the northeast.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different. So this is really going to be driven by the winds at the surface. And to put this into perspective, think of layers, right? So you have the middle of the onion, which is our surface, and we have the outer layer of the onion. That's going to be the top of our atmosphere. The winds are different at the surface compared to where the jet stream is aloft. So it's not as much the jet stream. The jet stream will impact the smoke coming in our higher levels of the atmosphere, but there are certain things that can bring that smoke down to the surface. Those things can include things like showers and thunderstorms, fronts that can transport air aloft down to the surface. So there's different maneuvers that bring that smoke down to where we can breathe it in. Now, what's impacting the smoke staying right now is we have a large area of smoke across the country that is near the ground, and because our winds are still coming out of the northeast today and through portions of tomorrow, that's the easterly component that's continuing to draw in the surface smoke. Now, at times, the northeasterly flow or easterly winds are also pulling it away. So it's just a matter of how much surface smoke do we have to the north of us, not higher in the sky, but to the north in terms of, the border from a bird's eye view, how much of that is willing to wrap back around this high pressure and pull back into Wisconsin. When we start to look at the jet stream again, that's going to be more focusing on how is that smoke in terms of density aloft, which can give us our orange and red sunrises and sunsets. But the main reason these air quality alerts are in effect, it's not because of the smoke aloft, it's because of the smoke at the surface. And to your point, yes, the winds are going to have a major role in whether that smoke is going to stick around or leave. But our winds will gradually change over the weekend. It's just we are being surrounded by this surface smoke. That is what is going to keep it in the area.
I'm glad that you explained that, because there is a difference between the surface
Yes.
winds and that air versus what's in the jet stream. And I think for the layman, pointing at myself here, it's easier for us to just assume that it's all the same, but certainly it is not. And that is why we have teams of weather experts. I'm going to keep you on here, keep your mic open, as we just kind of bounce around. Okay, so this is a look down from our city center camera, and you can see it. Again, you can see the Hone Bridge there.
Yes.
Just kind of the smoke hanging out and around. But then if you switch around, this is our downtown camera, you really can't even tell much of it, I guess, in the foreground. We were looking at some of the downtown buildings as our background to see just how hazy that smoke was yesterday. But then I'm going to change this on the fly. Let's see.
Yeah, and something you notice, you will notice it when you drive around too. You see it more in the distance, but this is why, Sam, this smoke is so dangerous, is when our air quality is poor. Again, you may look outside and say, well, it's really not that bad, but you are breathing all this in. These are microscopic particles that you are breathing in. I mean, American Family Field, we can see it a little bit better today, but yesterday it was barely visible from our camera.
Well, and even today, as I just go back and forth between these, this is downtown.
It's a huge difference, right?
This is just a couple of miles to the west, and it's a huge difference. And this isn't just having to deal with the depth of field of the camera. No, this is that haze, that wildfire smoke that is settling. And I guess that's a good word for it, is just kind of settling. It's not really going anywhere. It's just kind of hanging out.
Yeah. Now, Sam, can you actually pull up my graphics on the computer?
Yeah,
I
let's
can
see.
go into depth a little more about this.
Satellite and radar or surface wildfire smoke?
The surface wildfire
You got it.
smoke. You got it. Okay, so the green, that is the thicker smoke. And again, this is near the surface, so not what's high in the atmosphere. This is near the ground. You kind of see how it's swirling from Marquette and starting to surge down in Green Bay. That is spiraling around an area of high pressure. So that's what we're watching. We are watching the worst air quality right now. That is north of Minneapolis. It's in the UP, northern portions of Wisconsin. That's where we then switch over to our air quality. It's red. It's unhealthy for everyone. And that's really what we saw yesterday. But we are having at least some areas, even in Milwaukee County, where we have the yellow. So it's moderate. Our air quality is better. But notice all the orange on that map. That is where the air quality is unhealthy for sensitive groups. So we just talked about that red area. That's that thicker smoke that's moving from the UP to Green Bay. That is what we are going to track. That's going to move back into southeast Wisconsin for the upcoming days. So as we continue through tonight and the weekend, notice some of that green starting to move into Fond du Lac County down into Milwaukee County. And then we see a thicker mass of that swirling around on the backside, starting to really cover almost all of the state again. That's what we're concerned about. Now, it might not get as far to the Wisconsin-Illinois border, but I do think it is highly likely that we are going to have areas, especially heading into tomorrow, that will be unhealthy for everyone again. I know a lot of people are wondering, well, how come we can only forecast this a couple of days out? Again, winds change very quickly. Smoke moves very quickly as well. We only have a short range, short term, to look at the smoke and how far it is projected to move. So really, we only go out to Sunday morning at 2:30 a.m. right here. But based on how it's looking now and based on our winds at the surface, we're likely again going to have this extended into Sunday because of this. But it is going to be the big story. I mean, last time we had air quality and smoke this bad was about 2 years ago, or right around the same time. Actually, it was a little earlier when Summerfest was going on, but we've been seeing more of it. And especially with Canada, you got to keep in mind that Canada is a massive, massive country, and it is predominantly covered by forests. So when a lot of people are wondering, well, why can't they get this under control? There's a couple different things. You know, when we have fires in California, they have access to more water. There's more urbanized areas where they have streets to get to those fires. They're able to take the planes, and whether it's sucking up water a little bit from the ocean or from people's pools. In Canada, they just don't have the urbanization. There's no roads to get to these fires. It's mainly just massive areas of wood, and they sometimes just don't have the people, the bodies to get to them, and they don't have the roads to get to them. And on top of it, at times, you know, if it's not going to impact an area where people are in that imminent threat zone of danger, they'll just kind of let it burn. Canada also does have some rules when it comes to letting things naturally burn, something that Indigenous people did back in the day, to just let it burn so it can naturally kind of bring back some nutrients to the soil and stuff. So I definitely think in the upcoming years, with the wildfire smoke being a big thing, we might be talking a little more to kind of figure out how can we better prevent these fires from forming, because it's not only impacting us here, but we've had wildfire smoke across the entire United States. So this is a big deal that we're continuing to track. But just to kind of put it into perspective, imagine, you know, multiple states, the northern United States, all forest. You can't just put out all those fires that easily. I mean, it's a big area of land, so they're definitely dealing with some troubles up there. It's not the easiest to put these fires out like people think.
Yeah, as a guy who was forced to learn about this working in South Dakota and Colorado, you are speaking my language. I'm pushing my glasses up here, nerding out over just all the complexities that come with this. You can't just you know, you mentioned California, and California is really kind of this perfect example because just of how much of the homes and neighborhoods and businesses have been built up into areas where if a wildfire, you know, if a fire chief has the say, he's not going to build up there because he knows that it's dangerous in terms of how a fire can behave.
Right.
Perfect. Just a juxtaposition that to Canada, where a lot of these fires are burning in areas where they're not really threatening homes or businesses or natural or national parks and that sort of thing. So it is healthy to just let it burn.
Yeah.
It's not healthy downstream, but it is healthy for that forest to clear up some of the dead and down trees, the brush, that sort of thing, and it actually ends up producing this kind of greener forest, which I know as we say it can be hard to imagine with the huge plumes of smoke and the shots and videos of the fire that we have seen.
Yeah.
But that is how it happens.
But those videos, you know, are very telling of what the kind of landscape is in nature up there. And you think about it, I mean, we don't hire firefighters to just put out fires randomly. I mean, their main thing is to save lives. It's there to help people when they're in danger. And those are just areas where do they want to put all of their firemen into those fires, but then if someone else needs medical assistance or help elsewhere, they won't have anyone. I mean, it really comes down to that ratio of the crew you have, where you put your resources, and your main focus. So it's not that they're not focusing on the fires. I think they're just kind of focusing on what is the most imminent threat in terms of danger to still keep their community safe, to still keep their structure safe and intact. But, you know, the fires are something we've been tracking. It seems like we've been tracking a lot more. Part of the other thing we've been tracking is the drought. Some people have noticed the past couple years, certain areas have been a little drier, and that all comes back down to climate change. Some areas are warmer with climate change, some areas are colder, some areas are wetter, some areas are drier. And unfortunately, because of some of the drier conditions, that is going to be a more prone area that can have fires ignite and spread more easily with drier vegetation. So I do think we are going to be talking more about wildfires in the future. It's just how do we kind of combat the challenge of having more fires, but yet keeping people safe and trying to improve our air quality as well. It's very complex. It's fun to kind of study and to learn about, but hopefully we'll be able to see some improvements for the years to come.
Well, I ran a soundbite yesterday from head of the Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency who said, you know what, we're just kind of buckling down because it doesn't seem like we're getting any sort of help from the weather.
Yeah.
You talked about the drought. I believe it's severe in terms of their local classification. And when you're talking about hundreds of fires, you have limited resources. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, and if there's lightning and it ignites one of them, I mean, there's nothing you can do. These are not necessarily all fires that are naturally made by people, or I should say not naturally. Natural is like lightning, but they're not permanently caused by people. Some can be, but I was actually looking at a lot of statistics. A lot of these fires that are burning were naturally caused. So lightning, things where just one little ember spreads to others, and that's something that we as humans have a really hard time controlling. And even if they do get rain, you need a lot of it to lower the drought condition. So some people also ask, well, they've seen rain and storms. How are they still in a drought condition? Well, that vegetation isn't soaking up all the rain. We still have a lot of dry vegetation, even if a shower moves through, because that usually evaporates rather quickly. So yeah, complex, but we're going to have to see where it goes in the future. And we, especially here, have been impacted a lot. I really just want to have a nice weekend without smoke. But we will obviously be tracking that very closely through the upcoming days for those who want to get outside. And I've seen a lot of people walking their dogs too. So I'm sure if you are having issues, that also impacts your pets.
Definitely. Lisa Michaels, thanks for the science lesson here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Sam.
All right. So it is, what time is it? 2:02.
No problem.
And again, it's just an important discussion that we have to have because this air has, as Lisa mentioned, this surface air is kind of hanging out in Wisconsin again. Again, she mentioned she would not be surprised if the air quality alert that is in place right now that was just extended to noon Saturday is extended again to noon Sunday, just with the 48 hours of data that we have to study those winds, which again are hard to predict. So we're going to take a break here in the second hour of the Wisconsin Live Desk. When we return, we're going to take a look at some of the other stories that are popping up both locally and nationally. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. Sam Kramer back with you on the Wisconsin Live Desk. It is Friday, August 1st, 2:05 on this Friday afternoon. Thanks so much for being here again on this new-ish, I guess, tool we would call here at Fox 6 in Milwaukee that allows us to dip in on things that are happening locally, in the state, nationally, even internationally. And right now I'm looking at, let's see, we've got a couple of newsers going on here. And I am going to pull up one that is happening right now in Cincinnati, where video of a brawl that happened a couple of days ago has just spurred a national debate. And right now, the mayor there is holding a press conference. Let's listen in.
We have implemented and regularly updated residents on new police task forces going after street-level crimes, new walking patrols in our urban core to increase visibility, and a rollout of a new drone program as first responders. However, any violence, any tragedy is inexcusable in our city. It is our responsibility as city leaders, it is my responsibility as your mayor to fix it. There is obviously more work to be done, particularly in our downtown, but our strategies and investments have led to a significant decrease in citywide crime. And as Chief Teresa Thigi will further discuss in detail, this is a moment to double down on the investments and strategies that have driven the progress that we've seen so far. Before I welcome the city manager to speak, thank you to all our police here in Cincinnati for your exceptional service and your sacrifice. From our CDRT and SWAT teams to the task force patrolling our hotspots, to every officer upholding their oath to protect the residents they represent. It is because of you that all of this is possible. And thank you to all our partners here locally and beyond for helping us in this critical work. As we've announced, Governor DeWine has not hesitated to come to the table in support of our Cincinnati efforts with public safety resources to strengthen our local law enforcement approach. That is the kind of public service based in real action and collaboration that makes every community here and throughout Ohio a better place. Governor DeWine is a good man with a proven track record of putting communities over partisan politics, and I'm grateful for his collaboration and partnership. I'll end with this. Cincinnati is a special place. We are a proudly diverse city with a large and vibrant Black community that is rich in tradition and in history. The racial dynamics of this fight are unavoidable, and some have cynically used the opportunity to try and divide us along racial lines. That is a choice we must firmly reject. But rising to challenges like this, to create something even brighter, is nothing new for Cincinnati. This is the city that served as the gateway to freedom on the Underground Railroad. This is the city where, out of tragedy, we built a community-driven national model for problem-solving oriented policing in the collaborative agreement. We have the scars to show the hard work that it has taken to get us to this point, and our community is stronger because of how we have responded together. Now is not the time to turn away from each other, but to reach toward our shared humanity, irrespective of race and creed. That is the story of Cincinnati's past. It is the strength of our present, and I'm confident it will lead us into the future. We will continue to come together to work toward creating more shared prosperity and to build more momentum as a united front. That momentum is not going anywhere, and neither am I. Thank you, and I will welcome City Manager Cheryl Long.
Thank you, Mayor. Cincinnati is a city of unity. The evidence is standing here with us today. The people who lead our communities, build our future, and connect us to the world. If you live here, you see why people want to call Cincinnati home. You see it in our riverfront, our entertainment, our culture, our neighborhoods, and you feel it in our people who are passionate, creative, and full of life. If you live here, you know the character of our city. We rely on each other, support each other, and lift each other up, and refuse to let hate define us. We live beautiful and rich lives. Yes, tensions are high right now, but if you live here, you know we will get through this period and come out stronger together. If you live here, or if you visited here, you know that. Everyone standing here knows that. Everyone behind the cameras today knows that. The only people who don't know that are people who don't know Cincinnati. My staff, which is more than 6,000 dedicated public servants, are working around the clock to deliver services protect our communities, and build our future. I stand here today on behalf of all of them. There is no excuse for these folks who come to work for the benefit of everyone to receive abusive, hateful, harassing, and bigoted language, which unfortunately has been happening all week long. It needs to stop. As always, I'm proud to stand here with the Police Chief, Teresa Thigi, and commend the entire department on the work they do for this incident specifically and around the clock, day in and day out. As city manager, it's my responsibility to amplify what they've told me. They need your help. If you see something suspicious or if you're in a dangerous situation, call 911. When your phone comes out, don't open Instagram Live. Call the police. Keep your firearms at home and lock them up securely. We are one city, one region. We rely on each other. Our strength is our togetherness, and our future depends on it. If you live here or if you visited here, this is not a surprise. You know that. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Long time no see, huh? All right. Fellow Cincinnatians, I stand firmly behind my initial statement. What we all witnessed in the viral video released early Saturday morning was not only disturbing, it was outright cruel. It was an act of violence that shook us all. Let me be clear, every single person who played a role in that attack will be held accountable. Trust me when I say this. The Cincinnati Police Department, had the Cincinnati Police Department been notified in real time, our officers would have responded with urgency and force to protect life. We rely on the eyes and voices of our community because silence in moments like this can be dangerous. As of today, our investigative teams have identified 6 victims, 5 males, 1 female, each subjected to unimaginable physical violence. Our thoughts are with them as they begin to heal from this traumatic event, knowing their lives have been forever changed. Through relentless work, CPD has now charged 6 individuals with felonious assault and aggravated rioting. Of those, 3 have been arrested and their names have been released to the public. Our Fugitive Apprehension Unit is actively pursuing the remaining 3, whose names will be released upon capture. This remains an open investigation, and I want to assure you, we will not stop until justice is fully served. But this incident is more than an isolated tragedy. It points to a broader challenge, a revolving door of justice. As I stand here today as the police chief, people can take punches at me all day long. That's fine. That's fine. I'll take them. Our officers risk their life daily to remove violent offenders from the streets, only to see them released quickly and sometimes without consequences. This cycle must end. We cannot and should not ask our officers to bear this burden alone. The criminal justice system must work in full cooperation with all entities doing their part to ensure lasting safety for our community. Despite these challenges, the men and women of the Cincinnati Police Department show up every day giving 100%. From innovative violence reduction strategies to day-to-day problem-solving efforts, we do it because we care deeply about this city and everyone who calls it home. To our citizens, we need you. We need your eyes, your voice, and your trust. I'm confident that if we all work together, we can create a safer and stronger Cincinnati. I want to add one bit of information for you that I received today. Yesterday, a member of the executive board for the Hamilton County Chiefs Association reached out to me very kindly to check on my well-being, and I'm grateful for that. During that conversation, I made a request for the organization, the Hamilton County Police Chiefs Association, to form a committee to work on this ecosystem of our justice system here in the county. You know, it used to be I'd wake up in the morning, see the news, find out we had a shooting in Cincinnati. Now it's also troubling that I wake up and I see that there are shootings in some of our suburb areas as well. So this revolving justice system affects the entire county. And so our organization will be forming a committee, and we will ask prosecutors, common pleas judges, municipal court judges, juvenile court judges to join us to find out how can we collectively work for a safer Cincinnati and for a safer Hamilton County. Thank you.
Okay, so we have been listening to this press conference held by city officials in the city of Cincinnati. A lot of defensive language from the mayor, from the city manager, and from the police chief, who you just heard from there, after a brawl that went viral for all the wrong reasons at about 3 a.m. Saturday, just a street fight, if you will. And the police chief, the city manager, and the mayor there criticizing people that were there, who were pulling out their phones, going live on Facebook, on Instagram Live, and just recording this moment, rather than first dialing 911 to bring police there. The police chief there said quite confidently, had any of those people first dialed 911, we're confident we could have arrived and actually prevented this from becoming a bigger ordeal and thus a national story that is now being discussed all over the country. Police chief there mentioned 3 people have already been charged. They've appeared before a judge. They found 3 more people involved in this fight that they are looking for in connection to criminal charges. And we do know at least one woman who a senator in Ohio has identified only by name as Holly, was just brutally attacked, and she was beaten. There's video of it that has since been blurred and used in news reporting across all channels. But that it really pulled at this senator's heartstrings and is trying to advocate for her. But again, a lot of pointed language there, especially from the police chief at the end, talking about the police department doing their role in terms of solving these crimes, finding the people they believe are responsible, arresting them, and bringing them to prosecutors. But then she criticized the district attorneys there in Hamilton County, saying that it's a revolving justice door, a revolving door of the justice system, and that sometimes some of the people that are arrested for things there are not held accountable, are quickly released, and before they know it, they're seen again accused in another crime. So strong language after what has been some strong criticism over the last few days after that incident Saturday. I know in the first hour, our investigator Brian Polson had talked about Brett Lemoyne on a fun story today that was a 106th birthday party that is being held at a senior living home. Doesn't look like we're going to be able to get that today. This is just the mechanics of live television news. Sometimes things happen. We had to adjust some crews to chase down some other stories. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to look at the weekend that is coming up at State Fair, also a big announcement from the Milwaukee Bucks, and whatever else pops up in the next 10 minutes. You're watching the Wisconsin Live Desk. We'll be right back. And we're back on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Thanks so much for being with us on this Friday. It is August 1st. Hard to believe, frankly, that August is already here, but nevertheless, here we are. It is just the perfect time, normally at least, to be in Wisconsin during the year. It is the summers when it's cooler on the lake. The nights are beautiful, and gathering around on the lakes, in the parks. So many great places to go, albeit right now, dealing with some of that wildfire smoke, as Lisa Michaels touched on in the first half of this second hour. I want to just take a look around outside again to see what we are seeing just from our cameras. This is a look at American Family Field there. Again, still pretty hazy as you look at this camera out in West Milwaukee there. Not as bad as it was yesterday, and I guess we'll take it when we can get it, but nevertheless, still a issue for people, especially those that are living in considered to be sensitive groups, especially those living with heart disease, asthma as well. So yesterday the air was unhealthy for everyone. Today it's just unhealthy for people with that are considered to be living in one of those sensitive groups. But don't take that as a green light to just get ahead and get outside, because it can creep up on you. So we just take a look at some of these other cameras. This is our city center camera, and there it's kind of harder to see in that it just is, you really don't see that smoke up against any of the downtown buildings, which, as I had mentioned, we had used yesterday as kind of our barometer, if you will, to see just how hazy it was. Is the building clear? Can you see it? Can you not see it? As Lisa mentioned, in June 2023, we saw a lot worse conditions from bigger fires that were burning in Canada. So this time it's a little bit later. That time, June 2023, was just as Summerfest was getting unfolded. And of course, this time it's happening as State Fair is unfolding in our area. Speaking of State Fair, day two, a lot of excited people out there for day one, and certainly even in the midst of this kind of troubling air quality, State Fair officials are expecting some big crowds this year, especially this week. And let's take a look at who's coming up here tonight on the main stage. Boys to Men with Bobby V. You never know what you're going to get music-wise at the Wisconsin State Fair, but this one, have to imagine, will be a popular show tonight. Tomorrow, it's Neo with guest Bryce Vine, again at the Bank 5-9 main stage at Wisconsin State Fair. Neo, always a fan favorite. And then Sunday, it's Queen's Riche. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that. If you do know, send me a tweet or a Facebook message so I can correct that. Nevertheless, with guests Great White and Quiet Riot, I should know that, but I don't off the top of my head. So that is what it is. Let's take a look at the barn schedule for what we are seeing, and there you go. So color-coded by all the animals there. So today you get everything, tomorrow you get everything, and almost Sunday everything but what, the horses, the draft horse there. So there really is something for everybody. Let's look over at how to get to the fair. There are so many options. $15 to park at the fair. Of course, you can park in people's yards or on their properties surrounding in nearby West Dallas. That, of course, is fun. If you ride on a bike, you can do it for free. Of course, there's rideshare. Dallasman transportation shuttles are happening, as well as bar restaurants, just as if you were going to a Brewers game or a Packers game up at Lambeau. They have that as well. Looking at Spin City, if you got children or just really love rides yourself, tickets are $1. However, it doesn't mean that there's your admission into a ride just for $1. Those rides and games cost anywhere between 3 and 8 tickets. So if you're looking for more bang for your buck, you go the unlimited route with the wristband. You will get your money back in just a couple of rides. And like this too, on Monday morning from 11 until 1, they're going to have a sensory-friendly morning. So if you have anyone that is neurodivergent in your family, this is a perfect opportunity to take them to a fair, and an opportunity for them to really enjoy and not have to worry too much about some of the stressors there. And then let's see. So we've got that going on. We are a long ways from the NBA season returning to our area. However, today the Bucks made an announcement that I think a lot of people were hoping would come. It has nothing to do with the roster, just how they will look. Let's bring this up on tag board. That's right. The City Edition uniforms for the 2025-2026 season are here, and it's the return of the Cream City uniforms there. It says Cream City across the chest. It is that Cream City color based off of the Cream City brick. These were actually originally worn in the 2019-2020 season. Delaney, I'm going to bring you in here. What do you think of these?
I like these jerseys.
Yeah, I like them a lot too. There isn't an official reason on why they went away. Bucks Twitter, which loves the rumors that come and fly, they believe it has to do with the actual game broadcasts, in that some of the ads that are transposed onto the court were having trouble going through that Cream City color. So is that the fact? We don't necessarily know, but I do know that the sports team got a heads up on this yesterday. Nevertheless, there you go. You see it right there. And I love that they got Miles Turner, Bobby Portis, and Giannis Antetokounmpo all in there as well, with a really good graphics team. So looking forward to that. Of course, football hasn't even really returned just yet, but we're already talking about basketball a little bit here in the Cream City. So that's going to do it for us here on Hour 2 and on this Friday, again, August 1st. On the Wisconsin Live Desk, we got plenty of stories that you'll want to see coming up tonight on Fox 6 News, starting at 4 o'clock and all the way through 10 o'clock. Have a great day. We'll see you there.
Every year in America,
it just breaks my heart.
More than 16,000 dogs and cats undergo painful experiments in the name of medical progress.
We don't want our tax dollars being spent to torture pets.
This week on Open Record,
I don't think we should do research on dogs or cats.
A seismic shift.
I think it's unconscionable.
From the #1 source of public funds for animal research.
I do believe that this is a tipping point.
And the undercover investigation that shows